Well, welcome to the Romans Hope. I'm here again, back down at as I said, one of my favourite spots. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the creation because we're on to chapter 8 and verse 18. Look, listen. There's a lot of concern about climate change and the planet, and there's a lot of hysteria, and a lot of Christians respond either by just going along with that hysteria and thinking we can save the planet, or they respond by saying, it's all rubbish. And I think we're in the wrong argument. I think this passage that we're going to look at, and we're going to look at it maybe for the next three times, is the Christian answer to the question of climate change. Because this world is hopeless. So let me read this to you. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subject to frustration, not by its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in order that the creation itself would be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. Now that's a passage that we can meditate on many, many, many times. But let me just say just one or two things about it. And I wrote this down because I think it's so important. Look, there's a great deal of suffering in this world. And again, as we look at this, suffering and creation going together. This is a wonderful world, and yet there are things that are wrong with it. This is not heaven. When God created, he saw that it was good, but then evil came in. And it's ironic, in climate change and so on, people say, well, it's human made. Well, yeah, duh. That's what sin has done. Sin has corrupted. Now, where our climate change activists get it wrong is thinking that we can save the planet. The planet's not going to be saved by us. I was thinking about all of this, about how things are wrong. I had a dream this week. It was kind of a strange dream. I dreamt that my dad was on the phone. For those of you who don't know, my father died a couple of months ago. And I dreamt that he was on the phone and he was telling me that he had a broken hip. And that's the kind of thing my dad would do. And I said, in my dream obviously, I said, but Dad, that's impossible. You're in heaven. That doesn't happen in heaven. Well, it happens on earth. And bushfires happen on earth. And drought happens on earth. And earthquakes happen on earth. And as I say, we'll look more and more at that. Now, the suffering, look, it's an extraordinary thing. Our present sufferings are not worth comparing the glory that will be revealed in us. Our present sufferings can be immense. You're watching this right now and you could be really suffering. But Paul uses a word in which he says, it's like heavy, it's like you're an old hippie going, hey man, that's heavy. And he says, here's our suffering. And it may be the most intense suffering, but on this hand, here is the glory of God, and it weighs. In fact, on the scales, it far outweighs the suffering that we go through. Now, all I can say about that is, wow, the glory must be really, really something, mustn't it? It must be absolutely tremendous. Now, let me say something just about the creation. In being ruined, thistles and weeds and everything else. And frustration. Notice this word frustration. This creation is frustrated. The creation's, I was going to say not a living thing, but it is. But it's not a cognitive thing. These trees behind me, that waterfall, it's not saying, I'm so frustrated, I wish I could be something else. So how is it frustrated? It's frustrated because all this creation exists to proclaim the glory of God. And yet when it's polluted, yet when it doesn't work properly, it's not fulfilling its purpose. The trees of the field will clap their hands. The birds cry glory. And that's not the way it is at the moment. There's something that's not just quite right. And so it is frustrated. And that frustration is seen ultimately in death, isn't it? What's the point of Mozart dying at 35 years old? He could have achieved so much more. What about McShane? He died at age 29. Now, let me tell you what the secular vision of the future is. Never mind saving the planet. 100 years ago, the mathematician and philosopher Burton Russell used the second law of thermodynamics to attack theism. The second law states that the universe is dying, descending inexorably into chaos as its reserves of useful energy are squandered. Russell reflected on the vast death of the solar system that will follow when the sun burns out in several billion years' time. And he said this, and this is the Atheist Hope: brief and powerless is man's life. On him and all his race, the slow, sure doom falls pitiless and dark, blind to good and evil, reckless of destruction. Omnipotent matter rolls on its relentless ways. And Russell argued we should build our lives on a fountain of unyielding despair. We are a blob of carbon floating from one meaningless existence to another. Yet the Christian hope is different. Chrysostom says this: you see how God has provided for us on either hand, leading us by the beauty of the elements to the knowledge of his divinity, and by their feebleness, not permitting us to lapse into the worship of them. We look around and we see this. Some of you know that I've been posting every day a flower that I see in spring here. And people say, why? And I said, because it tells me about God. But also I see the frailty. And I know this is not the end. This is not the new heavens and the new earth. And that's why in this passage, and I really had probably better, honestly, I could go on about this for hours, and I better not. It says, we will be liberated. The creation will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. Now, let me just say this. This is the way to deal with climate change. All this creation is not waiting for humanity to come and save it. We can't. But this creation is waiting for humanity to be saved. So, as God calls his people, that is the purpose for which the creation exists. And that's why the most important thing any Christian can ever do to save the planet is to tell the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. Now next week we'll see how all this ties in with suffering. Isn't it just a brilliant thing? I think every day for the past 3 months, I have thought about these verses, and they still amaze me. So here I am, you can see, look, there are so many images and pictures and color and flowers and everything, yet this creation is waiting for the new creation to be revealed. I hope and pray that you're part of that, because the glory that's coming for you can't even be compared with the suffering that we endure now. God be with you, and see you next week.